In the shifting sands of Egypt, where tombs of pharaohs and nobles cry out to be remembered, one discovery defied everything we thought we knew. It was a tomb with no name, a silent void in a valley that prided itself on eternal life through memory. Most burials, even the humblest, bore inscriptions, names, titles, prayers to the gods. To be named was to live again. This tomb offered nothing. Its entrance, half swallowed by centuries of sand, was marked only by a raw, uncarved stone. No hieroglyphs, no blessings for Anubis. It was as if its occupant had been deliberately erased from existence itself. The excavation crew hesitated, not out of fear of ancient curses, but because something felt profoundly wrong. Every Egyptian burial, no matter how ravaged by time or looters, was an invitation. The dead reached out through art and text, begging the living to speak their names, to keep their souls alive. But this tomb pushed back. When the heavy blocking stones were finally pried away, the air that rushed out wasn't stale. It was sharp, biting, like stone scraped raw. There were no offering jars, no funerary goods, no signs of robbery. The corridor plunged steeply into the earth, its walls unnervingly bare, but it was the floor that stopped them cold. It was gouged with deep, irregular grooves, as if something had tried to claw its way out. The marks grew deeper, more frantic, the closer they got to the burial chamber. Inside, a single, plain limestone sarcophagus stood in stark isolation. No gold, no inscriptions, no honor. The canopic jars, meant to hold the vital organs for the afterlife, were missing. This wasn't a burial born of poverty. This was a punishment. When the heavy lid was lifted, the mummy inside was perfectly intact, wrapped in layers of linen, but with no protective amulets, no scarab over the heart, no spells for the journey ahead. Most terrifying of all, the ritual to open the mouth, allowing the soul to speak and eat in the next world, had never been performed. And the name, the single most essential key to eternity, was nowhere to be found. For the ancient Egyptians, this was a fate worse than death itself. To die unnamed was to be severed from the afterlife. Without a name, the Ba, the part of the soul that could travel, couldn't return to the body. Without inscriptions, the Ka, the life force, couldn't receive offerings. Without the magic spells, the soul was trapped, unable to pass the gates of the underworld, unable to join the blessed dead. It would remain aware, intact, and eternally incomplete. A soul without a name doesn't just fade away, it lingers. Scholars debated its meaning. Was this a traitor? A criminal so vile that their very memory had to be annihilated? Damnatio memoria, a curse of forgottenness. The local villagers, however, had a simpler, more chilling name for the mummy, Khepren. It wasn't its real name, because it had none. Khepren, the unfinished one, the broken cycle, the thing that should not be. They refused to go anywhere near the tomb, a dread passed down through generations. The mystery of the scratch marks on the walls deepened. Grave robbers couldn't have made them. They ran upward toward the sealed entrance, getting more desperate the closer they came to the surface. It looked as if someone had been clawing their way up, from inside a sealed tomb, over and over again. As if whatever lay in that sarcophagus had never stopped trying to get out. An examination of the mummy revealed the same horrific damage. Beneath the linen wrappings, the finger bones were worn smooth, ground down as if scraped against stone for an eternity. The wrappings around the hands were shredded from the inside. Yet the sarcophagus lid was intact. No exit had ever been forced open. The chilling conclusion was that all this damage had happened asterisk after asterisk the burial. The first night the archaeologist camped near the tomb, a worker awoke from a nightmare, his fingernails raw and bleeding. He dreamt of scratching. Soon others had the same dream. Suffocating darkness, the feel of stone against their skin, an overwhelming urgency with no goal. They dreamed of a name just beyond their grasp, a vital piece of themselves missing. One man woke up screaming a word in a language no one recognized. It hung in the air like a discordant note, a sound that felt inherently wrong. The lead scholars dismissed it all as mass hysteria, stress, the power of suggestion. They doubled the guards and pressed on with their work. Then the sounds began. Not a dramatic wail, but a slow, rhythmic rasping. A faint scratching echoing from deep within the stone at night. It always came from below, from the direction of the tomb, and it always stopped the moment anyone tried to investigate. Sophisticated recording equipment picked up nothing but silence. The local workers, their faces pale with ancestral fear, refused to stay after sunset. They said the soul was waking up. An old woman from a nearby village tried to explain. It was buried awake, she whispered to a researcher, not in body. In knowing, she said that without the proper rites, the soul would awaken in total darkness, fully conscious, trapped in its corpse, unable to move on, unable to die. It would try to get out, she said, her eyes wide with a certainty that defied science. Anyone would. On the 15th day of the excavation, a graduate student vanished. His footprints led directly to the edge of the burial chamber and then simply stopped. There was no sign of a struggle, no evidence he had ever left. All that remained was a single, fresh scratch mark on the stone floor, deep and unmistakably made by a human hand. That was the final straw. The excavation was immediately halted. Officials ordered the tomb to be resealed. The mummy was left where it lay, the sarcophagus lid lowered, the blocking stones pushed back into place, entombing the horror once more. That night, everyone for a mile around had the exact same dream. They were in a narrow chamber, the walls scarred and bleeding stone. Their hands were scraping until linen tore and bone ground against rock. And a voice, not heard but felt, a desperate pressure inside their minds, pleaded with an unbearable insistence, "Remember me," but there was no name to remember. The next morning, a chilling discovery was made. The grooves on the corridor walls were deeper, they were fresh, as if the attention, the brief moment of being known, had renewed its strength. The tomb was sealed permanently, no markers were placed. No official report was ever published. The official story was that the site was geologically unstable. But privately, no one involved ever wanted to speak of it again. To name it was to give it shape. And to give it shape was to give it permission to exist. Even today, the locals shun that part of the valley. They say animals refuse to walk on that ground. After heavy rains, new scratch marks are sometimes found on the exposed rock, leading from nowhere to nowhere. They say the soul of Khepren still wanders. Not the mummy, not a ghost, but the essential part of a person that was denied its peace. A soul without a name cannot rest, it does not sleep, it waits. And in the suffocating silence beneath the stone it scratches. Not to escape, but to be known. Thanks for watching. If stories of the unknown fascinate you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.